So, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we will be discussing how the ExpandIT solution works for service organizations, and more specifically, how ExpandIT's forms work within the ExpandIT software. So, I believe most of you are familiar with ExpandIT, but for those who don't know, we are a Microsoft Dynamics independent software vendor, and we specialize in service management. And if I haven't met you already, my name is Julissa Gonzalez. I work on the marketing and business development side at ExpandIT. And we also have Taylor Rogie, who is a field service product expert and business analyst, who will be speaking in just a few minutes. So just a few housekeeping notes before we begin. We are recording today's session, so everyone who registered will get an email with a link to the on-demand version within the next few days. This session will run for approximately 50 to 60 minutes, which does include time for Q&A. And that being said, if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit your questions on your RingCentral console, and we'll address them towards the end of the presentation. And if for some reason we don't have time to answer all of the questions in today's live event, please be assured that we will follow up with you directly following the webinar. So the agenda is as follows. We'll look at the objectives for the webinar, and next we'll discuss key takeaways. Taylor will then get right into the demo, and as mentioned, we did allocate some time for Q&A at the end, so we'll go over those questions at that time. And we'll finish off with next steps and additional resources you can use. So what is the main objective for today? The main objective is to provide a high-level education on how ExpandIT forms work within the ExpandIT software. And during the session, Taylor will go over how to build custom forms, so question types and rule types, how saved documents connect back to the ERP, how customers use forms, and what that form actually looks like at the end. So now I'll hand it over to Taylor to get started with the demo.
Okay, hello everyone. So today we will be demoing and doing a training on how to create forms with ExpandIT. Forms are important for service companies because it expedites the communication from the field to the back office and allows companies to spend more time in the field than requiring their employees to come in to turn in paperwork. All of the data filled into those forms are also stored in tables and can be accessed from a reporting tool if needed. So filled out forms are accessible from the history in both the planning board and the mobile client. And to begin, we are first going to go in and show you how to build the form. So with your license, you can create custom forms to be filled out by the mobile client. The form can capture images, signatures, answer questions with drop-downs, text fields, or predefined answers, and display work order information as well. The form builder is easy to use and is maintained by the customer. So the form is filled out in an easy to use manner from the mobile client and then can be exported or emailed as a PDF for viewing. We even have the capability to export the data to a particular format if needed. For example, a government form or a customer specific form. The form builder is in our BAS, where you also find your planning board and approvals module. And then you would go under ExpandIT Services and Configuration, and then click into Form Definition. And this is where all of the forms are built and maintained. As you can see, we have some that are highlighted in yellow and some that are highlighted in white. So the yellow ones mean that they are disabled and the white ones mean that they are enabled. And this is basically where everything's built, maintained. You can go in and edit them. You can disable from here. Obviously, as you start building your forms for your company, the list does get pretty long, so you can utilize the filtering capabilities. So I can always put in a couple of letters and it will begin filtering my list down so you can easily get to the report that you would like. So to add a form, you're going to go ahead and click Add New. and it's going to pull up this box, and it's going to ask you for the name and description, links to, and a box that says enabled. So the first thing you want to do is enter the name, and the name is what's going to show up over onto the filtered page, but it also is what's going to print out on the PDF version. So we can always type in test demo form. And then the description is also visible on the mobile client, but it's more of giving helping describe why that form would be used or filled out, so that for your field techs, they may not understand what test demo form means. You can always enter some sort of information for them to actually understand why you would fill it out at the end of the service. So we can go ahead and fill that out. And then the next step we have is we can link forms to 3 specific portions of our system. So the first one being employee. You can create a form that's specific to a resource, or something that you are actually assigning to the work, or a group of employees based on those pools. You could also link over to a service order, which is all the work orders or that are being created in the ERP system or in ExpandIT, and that's what they're working on. Or you can actually tie it over to a service task, which is specific to that work order. When you have a work order, you may have multiple tasks. If that task that you are creating this form for is in that work order, then you would be able to only see this form when that task is specified on the work order from the mobile client. Most forms are created at the service order level, so I'm going to go ahead and create mine at the service order. Also, this enable button, as soon as you click enabled, it is visible on the mobile client. So we always suggest, while you're building your forms, while you're testing it out, you would most likely want to keep it as disabled so no one starts filling it out. As soon as it's ready to go live into your mobile and have your field start filling it out, you can always come in and click enable. Make sure, we really highly stress that when you're building your forms, you're previewing it, you're testing it in your test environment to make sure that the data that's being pulled in is what you want to display out to your field and your customer, because if your field does end up emailing it or printing it, it will give more information, and you would want make sure that you know what's being displayed. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and it has created me my form all the way down here. So here's my test demo form. The next thing we can do is we can actually add rules to the form for when they are required or visible to the mobile user. So we will do a separate section on training to go into more detail on how rules can be set up. So please reach out to your ExpandIT contact for more information on the part 2 demo. The rules are very intuitive. They go into a lot of depth. So we're trying to keep our 2 sessions really how to build the form, and then how to really make that form work very well based on rules and dependencies for your company. So we don't want to go into too much detail today. So I will high level go over it. You can come in here and add a rule by clicking into rules. This rules is going to pull up our 4 options that we have. We can create a rule for the service order type. So this actually comes over from your ERP system for your service orders. It's a type of the service order. So you could base your selections will be based off of what is set up in your ERP. But you could always say that anytime there is a service order type of service on contract, then this form will be visible for the mobile user to fill out. Or for it, if you made it mandatory, then it would make it mandatory for every time that a work order is assigned to a service order connected to the type of contract service. That's one way to do a rule. We also have department user, which can be assigned to the user pool or specific user. So if you select that, you can say, I always want my Belgium friends over in the field to fill this out when the contract type is, service order type is contract service. So you can build these kind of rules based on each other to limit it down, even going down to a customer specific. So you may have a form that is specific to one customer or multiple customers. Maybe you have a customer, all your customers who you service forklifts for. You have a forklift form that you need to fill out every single time. And only 4 of those customers of your 200, you can actually come in here and type in part of your customer name and select that customer. And then I can always say that it's mandatory before work, mandatory or not mandatory. So mandatory before work will require that this form is filled out before starting the work order. So when they go in to click start travel or start, it will actually notify them that they need to fill this form out, and it will pop the form up so that they can fill it out. So, and the next one is mandatory. That will mean that it is mandatory to be filled out prior to completing the work order. And not mandatory, well, pretty self-explanatory. That means it will be visible to be filled out, but it is not required. So if I go ahead and put mandatory here, I'm saying that this form must be filled out when a service order is contract service. The person working on it, our resource is in our Belgium order pool, and it's only for if they're working on a work order that is only related to tray research. So once I have all that filled in, I can click save, and it will save our rule onto our report. So if I come up here, I can show you where we can have multiple rules. You can add as many as you want on here. This one, for instance, is saying that it is mandatory, but it's not mandatory for these criterias. So you can add as many rules as you want onto a form. And by doing that, you just continue to click add rule, fill out the next one, add rule, and then you can save those. All right, so now it's time to build our form. So to go ahead and build our form, we would click into the report or into our form right here, and it will pull up our screen. So up here we have our form details, and this is really kind of just options on how you want, what information you want displayed. So this one, we have portal access. We have the ability to set none, read, or write. So the portal access is your internal planners, those that are using the BAS, maybe approvals, planning board, those types of functions. So most people set them to read so that they are able to just at least view them, read them, but they're not able to modify them. If you wanted modification, then you would set that to write. Mobile user access, most people obviously do write because you want the field or the mobile user filling out those forms and the internal users most likely just viewing them. So again, you can do all 3 of those options however you feel fit for this report. So I'm going to leave mine to write. Again, up here you have this enabled button. When it's ready to go, you would go ahead and click enabled, and it will turn your header in white. I'm not ready yet because I don't want anyone filling it out. You can unselect enabled. We have hide company logo. So this is the service company's logo, which can be programmed and configured within your ERP, or you can always overwrite that if you have a different logo you want to use by for some reason. You can always take control of the logo and company information that's displayed within your configuration. So that's your company logo and company information. Some people don't want to display that because it might be your corporate address. So it's, it's showing your company name, your address, your telephone number, email address, website, all that information is visible. You can choose to hide or show that. And then hide form header, that's, you can hide any of the form details up top, and maybe you want to redefine how that is displayed. You can always hide the form header. We already filled out where it links to. Translation, if you could always select you want it to translate your form from English to Spanish, you can always do that. Make sure to really go over this, check it, make sure that the translations are correct. You can always make changes to those translations as well. So form table, this is also one of the second parts of our demo and training that we will go into. It's pretty detailed, but we do have the ability to create a table within the database to collect all of this information. So that form table, you would need to create a unique value for every single form. And by creating that, if I create a test demo, let's say that's going to be my table name, it will go in and create a table within the database. And what that's going to do is every form does need to be unique. And then when you are entering your questions or creating your questions, you now have this field called form table column. And you will then create a name for each table column. So every question will have its own column. It will collect the data within there and can be exported to SharePoint, or if you have a third-party reporting tool of some sort, we can always work with you guys through the integration as well. So if you do want more information on that, we will be doing a second part to this demo and training. So please reach out and get the link for that next training session. So now we get to create our questions. So to go ahead and create our questions, we're going to click this plus sign over here, and it's going to pull up our line. So we have all of these types. We have different section. We can add order lines, which come from your work order, and we have questions that can be answered. So I'm going to go through each of these right now. So we have a caption. This is where you can enter a caption on the form, which is not a question, but maybe giving direction on how that form needs to be filled out and what the service tech needs to do before filling out the next question. So this is considered a section break. So I'm going to enter one in, and then towards the end of creating our form, we can move this one around. So I'm just going to say that this is not approved until a PO has been sent. So if they're maybe requesting additional work of some sort, you're not going to want to say, hey, go ahead and fill this out, but now that means that it's approved. We're saying this is you submitting a request and it's not approved until you received a PO from us. So we can go ahead and fill in that caption and click save. So now you can see right here, it has been added to our form. So the next one that we have are our actual order lines. So we have all of these ones called cost lines, material lines, service item lines, and timelines. So these are all ones that come from the work order. So it's really specific to that work order. It changes each time. It's not predefined. But if we do cost lines, it's going to give us more options. So I'm going to put in that my description is cost lines. We can always click to add a comment. You have the ability to show detail. So the details meaning the actual maybe hours worked if you're doing timelines, all that detail behind it. By not selecting show detail, it is a very high level summary. It's not giving really any details. You can choose to show prices or show totals, whichever way. You can even show details and not show the totals. Pricing total is going to be the price times the quantity that was consumed. And then you can always just show finalized. If you don't want to show them what was expected, you only want to show them what was finalized, that's even possible too. You can select, unselect that. This is where we are highly suggesting, please make sure that you are going in and testing and looking at what details, what totals, what prices are pulling from your ERP system, because you do not want to be showing something maybe that was consumed and now your invoice is going to not match that. So please make sure that you are looking at what details are being brought in. So we do have, again, we have those cost lines. Cost lines are what's been added to the work order. we have material lines, and material lines are what was consumed from the work order or planned visit. So maybe at the end of the visit, you need to show your customer that you use 75 feet of wire of that material because the customer was originally quoted 65 feet. So the cost of that invoice is going to be higher. That is what the material lines are. We also have service item lines. Service item lines are the work order lines which come either from your ERP or have been entered in on your mobile client or in ExpandIT. And then we have timelines. So timelines is if your system is set up to capture time spent on a work order or planned visit, when that form is being generated, that time consumed would populate into here. If you also have mileage or where you have your field actually manually entering in that they worked 8 hours or 6 hours, whatever time consumption, in our mobile client, you have that column called time. Whatever is entered there is what would then display into this form. So those are our 4 different types of work order data that does come over. So now we get into our questions. So this is where now you start building what questions you want to ask them. So we have many options on the field types that can be asked. So this makes it easy for a technician to answer those questions without having to type yes or no. If you have specific options, those can be set up on this form so that they are not having to remember what to type in for reporting purposes. It really does capture that data in a uniform and orderly fashion. So we can also make certain questions mandatory or even allow them to put a comment if needed. So if you have created that table, it will capture all of this data into these columns and it can be reported on, either again through SharePoint or through a third-party reporting tool. So I will show you on one of on here how to do a column setup. So our first question that we have, or the type we have, is a checkbox. So a checkbox, this is where you can create that list of answers for the question and they can check mark one of those answers. So for example, you can always put in your description, how did the service go? And you have this section called help text. So help text is where you really can give more detail for your internal user. So you're saying, how did that service go? Maybe you want to remind them, we want to exceed our expectations, or let's say our customer expectations. So that reminds them, hey, make sure you're doing a good job. We want to make sure that we are getting good information out to our customers. We're on time, we're finishing on time. That help text that I'll show you will show up for your internal user. So now that we've created our form table, you have this this section that says form table column. Like we had mentioned, you have to make sure that when you are creating these table columns, that every single table, every single question has its own unique column. So this one, you do want to make it short and sweet, but also descriptive. So whoever is creating your reports or analyzing your data does understand what this question was. So you could say, you know, service score, let's say, and service score. And then you can go ahead and select that you want that table name, table column name. And so that is that. You can always, again, we said we can add a comment. We can say, do we want this mandatory? Do we want to display the information, hide when printed? Maybe you don't want them to see this question when you are printing this out for your customer. You can even hide it on the mobile client if you need to. And then we have these 2 areas called dynamic. Dynamics, when you click into that, those are your dependencies. Again, this is a very detailed way. We are going to create more that second session to go into really how to make questions dependent on each other. It is possible. So you can say, make this question mandatory if all of the following match. And you can go ahead and add conditions in. So I will go through and show you how to do one. Again, though, they are very, very detailed, so we want to make sure that we make sure everyone understands how to create the form and then go into what we call dependencies, mandatories, and displaying functions. So down here at the bottom is where you actually create now your checkboxes. So we have our key. The key is what displays on the mobile client. You know, you can always, that's like your one word. So we can say excellent. So our service went excellent. We can say we exceeded expectations. And I can go ahead and click add. So now down here, see where it says options, all of these are going to become our options. So I can then say the next one is good and we completed the job, but it went longer than expected. So I can go ahead and keep adding these in, and we'll say the next one was bad, did not complete on time. So here are our options. So now we can always go ahead and add these in, and we can click save. Now you will see that it has added that as one of our options for our form to be filled out. So the next one that we have, I'm actually going to switch over to one so that I can show you everything we've done. This one, I'm going to go through all of our types that we have. So the next type we have is our date. Our date, we've gotten ahead and put in our description. What we're saying is a recheck date. You can, again, add in that help text. So when are you needing to come back? And then you can go ahead and when using this date format, it actually pulls up a calendar for them to fill in. So again, they're not having to type in all of the actual date format. That it's going to pull up that calendar, they select it, and they click save. Again, all of the fields are the same as before, but you know, you can always default the value. So if you want to default it to blank because you want them to fill it in, or you could always default it to today. For this instance, obviously a recheck today wouldn't make sense, but you can always change that however you want your default. Our next one that we have is our list. So we have the ability to add lists in here as well. Very similar to checkboxes, but you know, lists it might make more sense. So what you can do here is you have the ability to add that all of your options down here. Again, it's going to pull up on your mobile device as a kind of like a scroll list so that they can go ahead and check it. You do want to most likely be careful. Remember, they are on a phone or a tablet, so you don't want too long of a list, or too long of descriptions where they're kind of having to scroll back and forth and figure out what that option means. So that's a list. We have decimals. So you can always add in a decimal. So again, that was how many feet of wire was used. You can set up a minimum and a maximum. So on this one, we're saying there was a minimum of 1. They had to use at least 1 foot of wire. But maybe we don't want to set a maximum. So you don't have to set that maximum. You can always put in the number of decimals that can be added, and then a unit of measure. We're saying how many feet, so we want our unit of measure to be feet. So that is our decimal. We also have the ability to add in and request an image. So if you're using our option of image, we're saying take a picture of the circuit breaker. Maybe at the end you're saying, hey, I want to just make sure that circuit breaker looks the way that we expect it to look. Maybe for customer service purposes or trade damage claims, you're going to be able to say, yep, this is when we left, this is what it looked like. We can make that mandatory. And by using this option of image, what it actually does is it will pull up a picture of the camera and they can click it. And if they're on their mobile phone, it will pull up their camera function. I can go ahead and take their picture there and it will submit it onto the form. If you are filling this out for some reason on your computer, it will pull up your picture browser on your computer. So either way, it's basically just requesting that a picture is taken. This is really helpful on those dependencies that we have talked about, where you can actually ask a question and say, if this question, was there damage done to the install area? And they say yes, you can make it dependent that then this image question pops up based on them answering yes to that question. So it is super, super helpful. We can actually go ahead and do that. Making this mandatory if all of the following match, you can add a condition. And now it will actually pull up all of our dependencies that we can actually use. So if we said, let's say, was there damage to that install area? And the answer is yes, because of us, we can actually add that on there, and it will then pull this image up if I mark this yes. So I'm actually going to go ahead and click save on this, and we've now added our dependency. So the next one we have is an integer. It is very similar, obviously, to a decimal. You can set this up where, it's a whole number, so you can say how many other trades were on site with you. We're going to say there's a minimum of 0, but there is no maximum, and our unit of measure is crew. So they would be able to type in, there were 4 other trades on here with us. The next one we have is an option. So we have options, again, similar to the list, similar to the checkbox, just giving you another option to use. Where, again, that was was there any damage to that install area? And here are our options. So again, you can always add in your key. Our key, let's say our key is both, and our description is multiple people, and we can go ahead and click add. Let's say you're saying, okay, here's yes, yes, no, both, and you want to move your option of both to the top. You can actually click onto the option and drag it to wherever you want. You can always delete as well. So if I actually really don't want this both, I can go ahead and delete that, and it can delete it from your list of options. So if you're managing these reports and you don't want to rebuild an entire report, and it's really just because there's an option changing or you want it to be in a different sequence, go ahead and just go into that line of your question and go ahead and you can move these around. You can delete them, add any new ones, whatever the case may be. If you didn't even want to use this question anymore, 10 months down the road, you can always come in here and just delete that question, because you still want to keep all of these other questions here and keep the data there. So that's always possible as well. All right, so the next one we have is a static HTML. So static HTMLs, those are basically where you can add a web address if needed. Maybe to reference something specific for the type of installation your company does, or maybe a manufacturer site for a particular warranty information, something like that. This is also where you can create a link over to a form, maybe one of your forms that are on your website. Or you can even create this HTML where you create a custom form. If you do want a custom form that you have already maintained, you've already created, please reach out to your ExpandIT contact. And this was actually something that we would want to set up time to go over with you, understand why you want to create this form that's not within ExpandIT. It does require somebody to be able to write in code or HTML. So it is more of a higher need of somebody to be able to help develop that type of form. So if you do want to just reference, though, something on another website, you want them to be able to click into that link, you can always come in here. You can drop in the text to a link, to a website. You can drop that in. Go ahead and click save. And when we preview this form, I will show you that it actually will show up over on the mobile client. So our next one is we have a static image. This is where you can actually put in an image on the form. So maybe the person filling it out can see a diagram of what is expected. Maybe you're installing a particular material and you want them to make sure they understand what a herringbone pattern is on the floor. or what the circuit breaker should look like when you're done installing it. You can add this picture on here for them to see. Again, we do see a lot of people adding static images based on dependencies. So if you answer yes, that it was installed properly, it will then pull up a picture of how it should be installed or a diagram of that. So that is a static image. The next one we have is text. So text is just a text box. So there's really no formatting required to it. You're basically asking, where did you leave the extra material? And they can type whatever they want in there. There's no limit to the characters, but it is just a text box. The next one we have is our yes, no, and yes, no, not relevant. So yes, no means, we have a question that is always relevant to that you're asking. So it will apply to every situation that they are out on the field. So you can ask your question again, and it will just be a yes or no. But then we have this yes, no, not relevant. So yes, the not relevant comes into play when it's not always, the question's not always applying to every single situation. So maybe you're asking, did you install an air conditioner on the second floor? Well, you're not going to want to say no because you're working in a one-story house. So it's not related to that particular question. So to not skew your data, you would want to make sure to use this not relevant, and not relevant would then be able to be selected if you're working in a one-story, for instance. That default value, again, you can mark it as no, yes, or not relevant. You can make that as your default. If you don't want a default value, go ahead and click the little X right here, and it will default to blank. You can always add a comment, or do all your dependencies as well, which we'll go into more detail later. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, and then we are almost to the end. We have our signature. So signatures, this is maybe where you want that customer signature saying, yes, you completed the work, they filled out the form, and they can go ahead and sign it. That will pull up a box on the mobile device, tablet, iPad, whatever it is, and they can use their finger to sign it, click OK, and it will lock in that signature onto the form. So it's very, very easy to use. So now that we've gone through all of our different types, here is our form that we've basically built. Here's all the data behind it. So again, if you are kind of in here looking around, you're like, oh, I really did not want that to go, one of those questions to be right there. You can actually go ahead and let's say I want to move my picture of the circuit breaker up. I can go ahead, find my question, go over to these, little 3 lines right here, and you can drag them up. So you can move these all around however you like. You can move them around. You can also make them mandatory from here. So if you may have filled everything out and you're like, oh shoot, we do really need this to be mandatory, you can go ahead and select mandatory. You can delete them from here as well. So again, moving them around makes it very easy. You don't have to restart your whole form. You can just go ahead and move them from here. So as you are building your form, you are able to come in here and preview your form if you would like as well. So I can go ahead and click preview, and it's going to take me over to our mobile client so that I can actually see the form that I want to work on. I'm going to quickly go over here, and let me make this enabled so we can see it. And then I can come over to, I'm going to go ahead and grab a job. I'm going to start my job really quick. And then I can come over to my forms. So here are all of our forms, again, that we have kind of set up. You can see all of them on here. Oops, I need a quick start super quick so that I can access those forms. Okay, here we go. So here on our mobile client is all of our forms that we have accessible. So again, we can come in here, select a form. Here's a form that we just created. This is what it looks like. It's super easy for the field to go ahead and fill out. So again, here were those cost lines, material lines that can all see the details. So here's that timeline of detail. You can see that I have 0.25 hours on here, and that price is coming over from your ERP system. So again, this is where we're saying be very careful, make sure you are paying attention to what fields are being pulled, especially if you're printing this out. So those are those lines. Here are questions now. So how did that service go? We have our check boxes. So you can see all of our things. We can click exceeded expectation, fill that out. This one's saying that picture of the circuit breaker. This little text box right here is where you can add that comment text if I want to. And then our help text over here is the information. And it will tell you we want to exceed our excellence. So we want to make sure that we, you can see all that information. It does not print out. So just make sure you're aware of that. So I can go ahead and add a file in, let's say. And I can add a comment. This is our house plan. Click OK, and both of those will come back into our tables. Here's that recheck date. So from here, I can go ahead and select, let's say we want to come back April 25th, click done. It's very easy. No one's required to add the slashes, dashes, dots, anything like that. So your formatting of your dates will be correct. Let's say now here's the reason for our recheck. Pulls down all of our options that we have. We can select our option. And then over here to the left, you can see there is a orange star. So that means that this is mandatory. So if I don't fill this field out, let's say, it's going to remain orange. But if I do fill out my form and this column, you can now see that it's turned green. So that means we're good to go. You filled in your mandatory form, and we can, once we are done, we can submit this. If any of your mandatory fields are left blank, it will not allow you to close out or save this form. So again, we can fill in our information. Was there any damage? We're going to say yes because of us. So we're going to say that yes. And then down here is our static HTML. So that is that link. They can always go ahead and click into that link. It will pull up their website that you have filled in. Here is that static image. We just wanted to show them this is what diagonal meant. So that pulls up. We can say, where was the extra material left? This was our text box. So here we're going to say it was left in the master bedroom closet. Please check at walk. So we can go ahead and fill that out. Again, there's no limit on here. That one was mandatory, so our star did turn green. Was the work complete? We're going to say yes. And then was the material installed on the stairs? We're just going to go ahead and say that wasn't relevant because we were working in a one story. So see down here, our customer signature is required. I did not fill it out. Therefore, it is not available to click OK. It's not going to let me click here and say that I'm done. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and sign. And if you're on an iPad, you can maybe use your finger, pen, whatever it may be. And still it's not turning green, so I need to click OK, and that's when it sets it into our form. We're saying, yep, this is my signature. Now you can see down here that the OK is available to submit. So you have the ability to just go ahead and submit it. I can click OK, and it has been submitted to my work order, which will then be visible on the approvals or on the work order. So if you do want to go ahead and email this out right away, you can click into the form, or before you clicked OK, you can go up to the top and click this envelope, and the envelope will pull in the contact information for that customer. You can also always add in an email address if you know one. You can fill that in, go ahead and click OK, and it will send the PDF version over to them. Or you can go ahead and come here and click print. Print will then pull up your printer options for you to print it to a printer. Maybe your service techs do have printers in their cars. It can then go ahead and print over to there. So those are our options there. Here's our form. This is all that header information, your logo, your company info, all of that is all visible here. And this is how our form prints out so that they have a complete view of that form. So there is our forms. So we've now gone through how to view them, how to fill them out. Again, we are going to have a second part of our demo, so please do look out for that, and we'll go through how to do dependencies, set up rules that are specific. We're going to reach out to a couple of customers, get actual rules that they want to see, and walk through how that can be set up as well. So, all right, well, that's the end of my demo and training, so I will hand this back over to Julissa.
Thank you, Taylor.
You're welcome.
And so now we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. And the first one that I have is, do you have the ability to ask a question and then have a list of reason codes to pop up?
Yes. Yes, so we do have that. That is really how we use those dependencies. So we can set up, you can ask your question and have a yes, no, list answers, whatever it may be. And then if they answer a particular question a certain way, so maybe they say no, then we can then define the list of dependencies or reason codes maybe for them to answer from there. So it wouldn't always be visible. It would only be visible when they actually answer the question.
Okay, great. And then the other question we have is, can we have a form filled out that is on our current website?
Yes, so that is that static HTML option that we have. And what it does is we would work with you and a developer or somebody on your team that can write HTML code, and we can link that over to your website or to your site that you want it to go to. The one thing we do caution is at that point, there is no table created, there's no table columns created. So your data that's being filled out would be filled out. We can see that form, save a PDF version of it, but we would not have the data in our tables. So it's something we definitely would want to set up a session to go over with you and make sure that you understand all of the implications behind those.
Perfect, thank you. So now we'll move on to additional resources that everybody can use. So as mentioned, this is a recording, so we will be distributing that out to everybody. And we do have other educational videos on our official YouTube page as well, where we go over different topics and different training sessions. And we will have other educational webinars, as Taylor mentioned, in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for those ones as well. And if you have any topics that we haven't covered, please feel free to reach out to me or to your ExpandIT contact, and so we can possibly go over that topic as well. Lastly, if you are a customer and you need any type of support, you can always contact support at ExpandIT for any technical challenges. So with that being said, again, if you have any questions about the material that was covered, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.